What's going on, guys? We've had Jose on for, I think the first time you came on last year was for, I think it was you covered like a broad array of topics. It might have been mostly focused on immune health. And then you came back and chatted about maca at one point. I was like, you got to hop on, but we're talking about
Oh,
maca
that's right.
tonight.
Called me.
And yeah, so this is a Dr. Vega's third time back. He's awesome. He teaches for me over at Purdue Global. He does a bunch of other things. I'll let him you know, do his intro, his background. I think a lot of you will find it interesting. He does a lot of things in the nutrition world, holistic health world. Yeah, and then he'll dive into supplements, which was a requested topic by a few of you like a month or two ago. And yeah, I think he's going to keep it to mostly like an open discussion on that after a short presentation. So, come off mute, ask your questions, and we'll have a good one. Jose?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the intro. Good to, I'm obviously my memory is probably not that good to remember who I'm chatting with, but if you have been here before, nice to see you again. Like David said, it's a pretty quick presentation. I wanted to keep it kind of open. I had a couple thoughts on stuff and wanted to hear from cohort what, specifically they would want to get into because I've got a wide range of experience. I will go ahead and share.
Yeah, you should be able to. Just let me know. Cool.
Yeah, you guys should be able to see it.
Yeah, we're good.
Cool. So we're going to talk about this tonight. It's real easy. Quick thing about me, doctor of clinical nutrition. I'm owner and clinician in private practice for over the last 14 years, predominantly in manual therapy. Integrative functional manual therapy is what I call it, but it's a comprehensive form of manual therapy, looking at sort of the body from top to bottom, from pretty much every system, and then incorporating sort of complementary therapies like nutrition, herbal medicine, light therapy, um, into the practice more and more, doing obviously a lot of work with nutrition and herbal medicine. Been a clinical nutritionist for over 3 years now. I was a senior category manager in the natural products industry. That's a job I've held down for a long time as sort of a day job. It's where a big aspect or a big amount of my experience in supplements and the vetting of supplements and the understanding of the industry comes from, because I'm in it every single day and I talk to literally over 900 different people over the 10,000 active products that I manage. I'm also adjunct faculty at Purdue Global, so as you can see, I wear many hats. Interest is in Chinese martial arts, meditation, and foraging and wildcrafting, and pretty much anything that encompasses all of that. So any of those areas, you can always ask me questions. But why we're here tonight is to talk about how we choose quality products and how we vet products. I don't think it's that difficult in some ways, and in some ways it's very difficult, but at the very superficial sort of level, you want to look for third party certificates, you want to look for GMP certification. You want to make sure you're reading the label. That's like the quickest way you're going to ever find out if something seems fishy. um Obviously there's some really good labels out there too, but like that can be a dead giveaway. And you want to check for scientific evidence if there's claims being made, and that goes into sort of claims and what's allowed and not allowed. If you have a brand that's saying something they shouldn't be saying, it's a quick giveaway that they perhaps are doing something unscrupulous that they shouldn't be doing. So third party certifications are really important, for many reasons. They provide reassurance for whatever the certification is about. There's different types. We'll talk about a few of them a little bit later or as they come up. But some of the most common ones you'll see are the United States Pharmacopoeia, the BSCG, the NSF, or the Informed Certified Sport, which is really common in a lot of athletic products. Um, and I believe NSF is required for most of the sports, at least at the high school collegiate level. And I believe Informed Sport is the one that they're using even more in professional sports, from what I recall. But both are important. Both sort of test the products to make sure that they're free of adulterants. Um,
Jose, what do you think about Emerson Ecologics EQP third-party testing program?
I'm not. I guess with what I've read about it, it looks great. I don't know all of it
Yeah.
off the top of my head. If I pulled it up, I'd give you a play-by-play of what I think about it. I know it's pretty. There's a couple different points of how they're looking at things, so I know that that's really important, and that makes their product stand out better than others in that case.
Yeah, it's typically what I use. I was just curious what you thought. They're pretty transparent on their website about what their third-party testing includes.
Let me see. I'm pulled up right now. This is the beauty of us sitting here talking.
Yeah,
Uh,
Emerson Ecologics EQP, Emerson Quality Program. They give out a gold or a silver seal for supplements that have gone through their third-party testing, but you'll notice on Emerson that supplement companies like Thorne, which is pretty good, they don't have the seal because they use a different third-party tester.
mhm.
So,
Well, and that gets us into a whole nother conversation about uh where is this? Wish it had a bullet point breakdown a little bit more, but I mean, it looks like if it has that seal, it's gonna have at least GMP, raw ingredient, finished product testing. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've always trusted Emerson. Like Emerson's a trusted source, right?
mhm.
So everyone here listening, it's like Emerson, we know that they're doing their job, they're doing their due diligence. When it comes to individual brands, that's where this tends to become a problem, not from these larger distributors. Like Fullscript is another company that everyone uses a lot of, and they don't have a program like this, but they have a whole team that's vetting products to make sure that they're not bringing in products that aren't following GMP, that aren't following the proper DSHEA guidelines, or they're not following the proper testing protocols. So I think when it comes to choosing quality products and vetting supplements, what we end up talking about are what we're all going to be dealing with when working with people, which is I saw this on Instagram, I saw this on TikTok, someone recommended this to me. Um, there are products that you will buy at a CVS, at a Target, at an organic grocery store that could meet certain standards, but might not be considered a quality effective product that maybe me or David would recommend. But that gets into a higher level of detail of like clinical effectiveness, and that has to do with dosage, it has to do with sourcing, it has to do with how the um herb or nutraceutical is manufactured, like from a formulation standpoint, rather than like an ingredient standpoint. So I think it's important to kind of note the two differences. Like, is this product safe from like how it was made, what it has in there, what's the risk associated with taking it? If it was, like whatever the product was, maybe it's, could go bad or have a bacterial issue or something like that. Versus, is this product going to do what it's intended to do, or is it going to fix um whatever health condition, quote unquote fix health condition that the product is intended for? And the answer can be varied, because if the quality of the herb, the nutrients, if the dosage isn't right, you're not going to get the effect you want. So those are slightly different things to look at. um Let me see. So real quick, I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this, but how are they regulated? How are dietary supplements regulated? They are and they aren't. So under the DSHEA Act, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which was made in 1994, it kind of ensured that companies are ensuring that they're selling safe and properly labeled products. But the FDA does not have the ability to approve these products before they enter market. It's an aftermarket thing. So, for example, Dave could create a brand, put a product out to market. Maybe he does a good job, maybe he doesn't do a good job. To a certain degree, if no one gets injured, hurt, or complains, he might be able to continue to operate in selling that product until some regulatory mechanism looks at it and says, oh, his label's wrong, or he made a claim, or someone got injured because they took too much of it and there wasn't a disclaimer, what have you. And so that's one of the biggest issues right now that is readily debated, is how do we have greater regulation without limiting the ability for small companies to innovate, to make products, to get it out to people that could help people. There's a bottleneck issue when it comes to the regulatory mechanism there. um 1 second. Sure. One of the things that the Shea did that's important to note is it classified supplements specifically more as a food versus a drug, which is why the regulation is different. It's also specifically why supplements are not allowed to make any type of unsubstantiated claim. So again, this goes back to choosing quality products. If someone comes to you and they're like, I want to take this product, what do you think about it? And it's, I don't know, Osh, I don't know, it's turmeric and it says cures cancer on it, you can be fishy for that. And that's a bold claim. But maybe it says removes joint pain and stiffness. Well, that's a little bit more benign of a claim, but is it substantiated? And per the regulations, that would not be substantiated, so you can't say it because there hasn't been enough double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trials that show that the curcumin will, remove all joint pain. But there are some that show that it's, beneficial for inflammation, it's beneficial for cognition, and so structure function claims can be made about the products. In in which case that's totally fine and not egregious. Um, Deshay expanded consumer access. So really before that, the supplement industry was sort of like trying to become a thing, but it was being heavily sort of um, pressurized by the American Medical Association, and it was not able to grow. So when Deshay came out, it really led to sort of what would be considered the boom of the beginning of the supplements industry because it increased that market growth potential. It also inevitably raised a lot of concerns around mislabeling and safety gaps and third party testing issues and supply chain issues from a management perspective of importing and exporting. And it raised a lot of issues around consumer safety and how to inform consumers about what is and what isn't a proper product. So how are they labeled? This is something that I like to just talk about briefly because when people say that supplements aren't regulated, it's like there is a lot of regulation. There just might not be enough, or maybe not enough in a specific manner. But like when it comes to labels, there's a lot of things that supplements have to have. And there was a recent label change to the front package display where they increased the size essentially because they did all these studies showing that if the size of it was bigger, it was more likely that the consumer would see the call outs and understand the product better. So that was a recent change, maybe 2 years ago. Um, but they're required to have a supplement facts label, which specifically has to list the serving size, the number of servings per container, each of the ingredients that's in the product, the amount of those ingredients, and they also have to have a statement identifying it as a dietary supplement or vitamin. There's also normally a disclaimer on the product that says something like these claims have not been evaluated by the FDA. This does not constitute, that kind of standard um, risk label. The label's also supposed to have a manufacturing address and potential contact for the event that there's an adverse reaction. That's very important to see. Typically, there's also going to be like net weight and some other things. And if there's other ingredients, those ingredients and any excipients that are used, like maltodextrin, powder, or cellulose, those are all supposed to be listed. So very important to note because sometimes you can see a product that maybe looks good, but then you go and look at that ingredient breakdown and you're like, well, the product's saying it has lion's mane in it, but I don't see it anywhere on the label, or something like that. Or the thing that comes to mind is I think it was 3 years ago, maybe not actually. It's actually still ongoing, but 3 years ago is when I remember it. There was a lot of people trying to, and I guess they still are to a certain degree, sell Amanita muscaria mushroom gummies, which I don't know if you guys are aware of that mushroom. It's the one that everyone thinks of as the iconic mushroom, the red with the white spots. Um, it's a deliriant hallucinogen that's not a scheduled substance. So theoretically, you could manufacture and sell a product online and wherever you want. And people, obviously could get seriously injured by consuming a large amount of a product that's a hallucinogen. And there was a brand that was trying to get into a lot of retail stores, and they marketed their entire product as like sort of like a nootropic mental health cognition support because they're not completely wrong. There is some of those benefits in small dosages to that specific mushroom. Um, but on their label, they didn't say anything about having fly agarc mushroom in it. They said it was lion's mane and niacin and this and that and blah blah blah. And eventually they got shut down because they got reported for what they were doing. And there was another similar company that was doing a similar thing with chocolate. Um, and I believe I don't know if they got hospitalized or if they died. I unfortunately there was some young people in I think one of the western states that I'm unaware of, Arkansas or Texas or somewhere over there, that they got it because it looked like it was for younger adolescents, and they were hospitalized for tachycardia. And it happened like 4 or 5 times, and eventually that led to this company being investigated, and they found out that they were putting this extract in there and they weren't disclosing it on the label. Um, so like if a product is saying something and then it doesn't seem like the label is reflective of that, that's like a red flag for me when I'm looking at stuff. Being a category manager, I get products like every day. There's brands pitching, emailing, sending stuff. There's a way that it comes through on a feed for me, and it's just most of the time I'm just saying no, 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 mostly because it's not ready for market, not because it's bad. But I can't tell you how many times I've looked at it and been like, okay, this person's manufacturing this in their bathtub, jokingly, but like probably their house, probably not in a clean facility, definitely not following GMP. So, um, let's see. I like this quote, one that I've used all the time and I've reflect on. But it's really important to note that it's only the dose that makes something a poison versus a medicine. So keep that in mind when thinking about quality supplements and not quality supplements. Uh, GMP, real quick overview. It really just the good manufacturing practices. So this applies to the manufacturing, packaging, and labeling. It's supposed to ensure the identity and purity of products, their strength and composition. There's a lot of different requirements, and there's sort of standard operating procedures that have been laid out by the FDA on how these facilities have to operate when manufacturing products for quality control reasons. Um, there are rate limiter steps about like the raw material testing, about how products have to be tested before they come into the country. There's not a regulation that says it has to be tested after that, which is where you can start seeing how companies go above and beyond. Um, it has to do with cleanliness. Think of like OSHA rules and stuff like that. Like the facility has to be following certain like airlock procedures to keep certain things in and out, washing hands, wearing face masks for your beard and hair nets and stuff like that. Um, all of these things are part of the GMP. So when you see a company that says they're manufactured in a certified GMP facility, you can be assured that that's going on. And most facilities are inspected once, sometimes more a year. Vitamer Labs, which is one of the largest private label manufacturing companies in the US that manufactures premium supplements that anyone can go and get manufactured for themselves, follows strict CGMP rules at a pharmaceutical grade level, and they're audited anywhere between 2 to 3 times a year to maintain their certification. So, um, we already sort of talked about why third party testing matters in terms of like ingredient identity, purity, potency, and contaminant screening. Those are the main things that get covered in a lot of third party testing, but there's all sorts of third party testing that can be important, which we can talk about. But like I think about non-GMO, I think about glyphosate residues, I think about gluten-free products. Uh, those are the main ones. There's other ones, so like there's companies that do all the heavy metal testing and microbial testing, and they do plant uh gas chromatography testing to ensure that the integrity of the plant is actually genetically the correct plant for whatever that herbal medicine is. And like those companies will let you know about it. They'll either provide it or they'll say something about it. And if you contact them and say, well, hey, I want to see that for that, can you send it to me? They shouldn't have a problem sending it, especially if you're a practitioner or something like that. Um, Talked about the benefits there. Not much to say about that. That's my quick presentation on it. What I wanted to do is kind of go back through and talk about some of these things as questions come up. Or if people had recently like had someone say, "Oh, what do you think about this?" Or maybe you guys have something that you've been using that you're curious about. We can like have an open discussion. I could even pull up and share a website and we could walk through some of the steps that I do. But a lot of times when a brand approaches me, or someone says to me in my clinic, "Hey, I've been taking X, Y, and Z I bought off of Amazon. What do you think?" The first thing I do is I pull up the website, and I pull up the website and I look at what's information is there, do they have a story, what's their about section, where are they manufactured, what label claims are they not or are they making, um do they call out these things, like do they say that they're manufactured in a good manufacturing, a CGMP facility, do they say that they're third party tested for X, Y, and Z. um that'll be the first step. Then I look at the label, I look at the claim, I look at the dosage, and I'll tell the person what I think about it. I don't like things that come from Amazon most of the time because a lot of times it's in a warehouse that's not temperature controlled. So it's hard to say if the product's integrity is being challenged by temperature fluctuations. But everyone buys stuff from Amazon, so it's hard to get away from that. But that'll be the first step I do if someone comes to me with a product. The second step, which I don't tend to take too often here in my clinic because I don't have to, but I do very often for my day job, um, is a brand will provide the necessary paperwork. I will ask them for it. I will say, well, let me see your recent third party testing that verified the non GMO status. Let me see, your recent analysis of this herb for the, bioflat, like the beta glucan content that you're listing in the supplement facts label. Let me see, depending on the brand, what it is, like, oh, you guys you typed out this herb genetically. Can I see that gas chromatography for it? Because they should have all these things on file and be willing to share them with you, to say and show that their product is good. If they don't have that, or if they're hesitant, that is also a red flag. A lot of that information is freely accessible when asked for. The problem is asking the right person, and that can take some time because oftentimes who you're going to interact with is a customer service facing person and not somebody who's in quality control and assurance, um, with a brand. Um, Stop sharing this.
Here, you got one question in the chat, Jose.
Yeah, sorry, I was pulling it. I was going to pull it up next.
Oh, no worries. What's going on, Amy? By the way, good to have you.
Good to be here.
Hey, Amy. So Natural Grocers is a great company. I know a lot of people that work for them. They do a pretty good job vetting the products they carry. I believe their actual in-house brand is manufactured by the same ones that I work with for moms and for all these other companies, which is Vitamer, Vitality Works, maybe Reliance. There's quite a few really good manufacturers. So their products, who are manufacturing them are good. Um, yeah, I don't have any complaints. And then in terms of the NANP supplement certification,
We chatted
um,
about this previously,
yeah,
Jose, didn't we?
I yeah, go ahead, David.
No, no. I was just kind of thinking back. We had a conversation. What is it called? The Certified Dietary Supplement Specialist, maybe? Something
Something
like
like that.
Certified dietary supplement professional.
professional. Yeah. I'll let Jose touch on this, but I asked him the same question. I said, is this credible in the field? Do employers look at this? Would this do this? Would this do something for my Purdue Global students?
Mhm.
We're trying to consider setting students up for this along with the BCHN. But yeah, Jose, any thoughts?
Sure. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with the certification, Amy. Like I'm sure it's like I don't know the exact curriculum, so I can't speak exactly to it, but I doubt that it's poor. Like I'm sure it'll give you anyone beneficial knowledge on dietary supplements. I can't say that it's probably worth the time or the money. I've talked to the organization. I know that they have an initiative around it, and they were working with some big retailers to figure out how they could do it because it's part of a bigger idea of trying to figure out how to inform consumers better. The problem is that working at a grocery store is working at a grocery store. So like I don't necessarily think for anyone that's doing any type of level of higher education that it's necessary to then go get this to go get a job at a Sprouts, a Whole Foods, or an organic store, because you'll be able to speak to the products, the effectiveness much better regardless. And with a little bit of self-research, I think you'll understand the industry and what's going on. I don't think many retailers are specifically looking for that, nor are they wanting or desiring that certification, which is, I think, where the NAMP certification is kind of stuck right now, is they want people to have buy-in. And I don't think that's wrong. I think that there's a level of we need to be working towards something like that. But there's a big differentiation that we have to also have with what's a clinic, what's an appropriate healthcare facility versus what's a grocery store. And right now, especially in this country, a lot of people do go to natural grocery stores for alternative health advice, and it's their first stepping stone. So the person they meet in the aisle, if they meet anyone, is sort of the beginning of their health journey, which may lead them to a practitioner. Oftentimes at our stores, people direct people immediately to someone they know in that area, wherever the store is, that can help them better because they're not going to be able to speak to health conditions at the store grocery level because of DSHEA laws, because of compliance, and because of education and liability. Um, no retailer currently in the US has a service model based wellness department. And what I mean by that is none of the big players focus on service in that way. Now, there are one-off mom and pop individual stores that are staffed with people who are very knowledgeable that you could argue are service-based, but none of the big ones are. So, like, in some ways, the certification to me is useless. I think you could probably learn all that information and be really good at that if you wanted to go to a place. Like, if you were going to go work at a grocery store or a health department, like, I think that the credentials you have in other areas would be better than that one personally. That's not to say that it might not be worth something in the future, or depending on like how the board works on it, that it could be useful. But right now, I just don't see it as being very useful. And like, I go to the biggest convention in the U.S. for natural products every year, and it's not something that's there right now, or that's being looked at. But again, not to say that you're not going to learn something from it. Like, I don't know how much it costs. All these things, like, there's knowledge to be gained. It's just the question of how you apply it and how you get to use it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I chatted with Nicole Hodson about it a little bit, Amy. And before I just was trying to determine if we were gonna try to set Purdue Global students up for this, I asked her, are you seeing board certified holistic nutrition professionals get employed because of this supplement credential? And she couldn't give me a specific example. So
That's what I asked her too.
yeah,
There's not a metric for it, unfortunately.
no.
Um, I'll just say that I think at the end of the day, like, you're already going to know so much about helping people
Yeah.
through all the other stuff that you don't need something about that specifically. I think there was a part of me that actually thought, like, and I didn't talk about this with David, but I did sort of talk about it with them, is that like there could be a level of that would be important for people that are category managers in companies that are working with these companies to understand more. um, but not for healthcare practitioners. I don't think it makes as much sense. And even like when it comes to the industry and the job, I don't know if it makes that much sense because there's like a degree of it's a different job. You're not necessarily only picking stuff because you want it to fix problems or help people. It's, it's a business. So it's like, is this a cool item? Are they doing something novel? Is it manufactured properly? Is it, all these things before it's, oh yes, that is the one that's going to help somebody the most. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, sorry if that was a long answer.
No, that was good.
One of the manufacturers I mentioned was Vitamer, I believe. I think that's maybe who you're referencing. Oateca.
Was that it, Owatika? Was it the Vitamer? Just let us know if it was another one.
Let's see, do you have any suggestions for choosing overseas branch?
Yeah, I was asking about Vitamor. Is it Vitamor?
ER.
ER. Oh, thank you.
Vitamer. Sylvia, I don't Mm, it's tough. The European standards are better in many ways, but they're also very different. In general, a lot of like sort of like I would say European and Canadian brands tend to be better off in some of their sourcing and ingredient standards. So like I don't think you have to worry about stuff the same way. I still apply the same type of logic though of thinking about like are they making label claims? Do they talk about third party testing? Do they again depending on the product, are they genetically verifying the herb? Like what type of herbs are they getting? Like where are they getting it from? Um so it's similar process, but they won't have the same certifications. Like they're not going to be USDA organic. That's only in the United States. Um they might not be the non-GMO thing might not be as a big deal for those. Um hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if that's enough information for you, Sylvia, but essentially it's similar, but they do have different laws.
Paige has an interesting one here,
Yeah.
Jose. Do you have any opinions on all of the additives, the other ingredients in the supplements?
Yeah, I
You
definitely
mentioned like
do.
the anti-caking. Yeah,
Yeah,
so many fillers.
yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I have like two, I guess, two main perspectives. My personal sort of clinical perspective is I really like things that are minimal. I don't want extra excipient, like extra ingredients in my products, and there's lots of brands that avoid using all sorts of stuff. Um, I think to a certain degree, some of these things, like some of the anti-caking, and there's like anti-caking, there's sort of emulsifier, like there's some of those things. Some of them are almost necessary for the type of product, because of how the manufacturing at scale happens. And so there's sort of the necessary evil. They should be small amounts at most. And typically I'm more acceptable of them if they're coming from if the product is like organic and more clean than like a conventional. I don't like seeing things that are genetically modified that come from corn byproducts in general. I try to avoid them all the time from an allergenic risk perspective. Um, I personally steer clear from everything artificial, all the colors, the dyes, the stabilizers, the preservatives. There's some formulations that require a little bit of sodium benzoate preservative. It's just there's no other way. Citric acid isn't going to do enough. But it should be the very last ingredient. Um, what else? Natural flavors is an interesting one. Like I personally don't like that, but I'm fine with it. Like there are one of the questions, this is a kind of a category manager question that's not something that you guys would probably worry about, but I'll ask brands like, are there natural flavors hexane solvent free? Because a little unknown fact is that a lot of these natural flavors are extracted in hexane based solvents, and there can be hexane residue. Obviously it's a very small amount, but like I don't want to be ingesting hexane, and I don't want any of the clients I'm working with ingesting more hexane. So um I tend to be sugar alcohols are okay. I don't personally like them, and I try to avoid them in recommendations when possible. But there are, a lot of people don't care about those things, so they continue on. Allulose is really common these days. We don't carry any of those products at Mom's Organic Market, and I don't look at any of those products that get rejected immediately. I don't think allulose is completely safe, even though it's been being touted as safe. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Here's
Yeah.
one, Jose, kind of going off at additives, fillers, and things like that. I think most people you start working with, they get their supplements from the grocery store. Um, how do some of those supplements could be really good. But as a practitioner, how would you explain to the client the difference between, like a Centrum or some like basic low level, low brand supplement at the grocery store versus something like Thorne Designs for Health, Pure Encapsulations, Jaya Herbs, some of these, because it's just so easy for folks to just go to the grocery store, pick up a vitamin C or pick up a vitamin D. But a lot of times you want to recommend something a little higher quality.
Yeah. I mean, the way I've always done is it's just recommending like sort of like the standard, car versus a premium car, but also it has to do with the type. A lot of those products like a Centrum are using like a great one that I always go to is like, well, what's the magnesium in it? Or what's the calcium in it? And it's almost always oxide, right? And so we all know that the oxide variety is not worth anything. It's not absorbable. It's more of a laxative. So I can use that as a sort of pivot point to be like, well, that one's not that great because none of those things are, the B vitamin in it is cyanocobalamin, it's cyanide, it's not methylated, it's not going to be as bioavailable. Um, with the vitamin D, sometimes I'll recommend, oh well, don't buy that one because for all it's been oxidized or it's in soybean oil and it's GMO and you don't know if there's no testing that's been done to show if there's any glyphosate residue, and that's endocrine disrupting. And so I tend to lean towards that when it comes to trying to pivot and help someone understand why maybe the thing that they bought at CVS isn't the best. um there's also the argument to be had about the actual amount of milligrams. Like there's a lot of things that don't meet label claims, and it's because of product stability testing. And that's something that a lot of brands don't do enough of is product stability testing. Like another one of those unknown things is that vitamin D is not stable in MCT oil, which there are companies out there that still manufacture and use MCT oil as a delivery mechanism for vitamin D. But I know the labs that literally have run stability studies on it and have shown that it degrades really quickly in MCT. Something to do with the medium chain triglycerides don't stabilize the vitamin D molecule, so you can't, not all oils are created equal. And, if a product's like that, it's not going to be as good. So a lot of interesting stuff, but yeah, I don't know if that helps. What about Vitamin Lab? I'm not super well versed, but I do know that they use a lot of like patented ingredients and in-house testing. I think the Vitamin Lab's pretty good. Allulose, that's a good one. That's a little longer topic. I'll jump into that in a second. Food-based supplements such as Doctor's Research. Doctor's Research. What is that? It's not Doctor's Best. I'd have to look into like how they manufacture this one specifically. Danielle, I'd have to look that one up to see. In general, I like food-based options. The question is like how they get it from food to supplement. And there's different processes and different ways. Like Mega Food is a big food-based vitamin brand that's done like a lot of extensive work, and they have a particular food state process that is very impressive in how they like take that food and like under very like low heat and pressurization turn it into what it is. Um, Garden of Life was one of the original people to really put forth like a food-based line. Food-based lines are really good for many reasons, but they're only as good as the food that was used. So I think that that's a question I have a lot of times when it comes to this, like, well, where's the sourcing of this food that's being used? Because if it's, again, we get into this question of like things are contaminated, things are soaked in pesticides. If they're not doing the test, a food-based vitamin could be great, or it could be just a pesticide pill. And there's a lot of like greens, fruit powders out there that are marketed for weight loss and detox that I think if we were to test them, they would be off the charts because they're not using quality ingredients. So it's a balancing act. And then there's certain vitamins and minerals in a food-based thing that you can't standardize to. So there's a level of that that's difficult. But overall, I do recommend food-based more often for certain things, maybe for multis. Thanks, Amy. It did float to the top, so let me go back up and get that. I don't know what the name of the guide for supplement contraindications is. David might have that for reference. I'll have to look. I think I have a book somewhere.
Yeah. Atika, are you just wondering what resources we use to check if supplements interact with medications, if medications deplete nutrients, those kinds of things?
Yeah, that would be helpful to have a guide like that that a person could pull up before they recommend anything
Oh,
or
yeah.
when they know people are taking a supplement and they might have another condition that's contraindicated to what they're taking.
Yeah, I put a bunch of options in the chat that I use. I just pulled up one of my cheat sheets. I share this, I think, in the program. A lot of companies now have this for free. So you just have to find a company that you like. Designs for Health just made one. All the supplement companies have one now, it seems like. They're trying to get more practitioners to them to recommend their own supplements. And so they put out these free practical resources for practitioners. And so, you know, natural medicine is good. I think you have to have a subscription, the first one on there. But a lot of the other ones, they're free, and you can type in the name of the drug that someone's on, and you can determine if there's an interaction with a certain nutrient or if the medication depletes a certain nutrient. Then obviously, it's like a basic micronutrient class too. We can go over this sometime if this is of interest to folks. Just knowing which micronutrients interact, like calcium and iron, calcium and zinc, right? They compete for absorption. And so does that help a little bit, Awatika?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
So
What do you,
going back to oh, go ahead. Sorry, David.
no, I was gonna say, what do you use to check interactions, Jose? Just the same stuff?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think I tend to go to Medscape and Integrative Therapeutics,
Yeah, yeah,
and obviously start to memorize stuff too.
right.
I've used natural medicines in the past too. I haven't looked at Designs for Health though. That's cool. I actually, you posting that made me think about that's sort of a tangent. I won't go into it, but like there's I'm pretty sure in the near future it'll just be there's going to be someone's going to essentially get the AI system set up in a way where you'll be able to take your note of everything and plug it in and it'll spit out exactly what
Mm-hmm.
nutrient depletion interactions are that you need to be aware of and contraindicated even based off of your recommendation, because there's some people I know that are already working on it, so or have their own models that they've built, because I don't know, I don't play around with that stuff heavily enough, but I know you can sort of build your own language learning models.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So Laura, your question on mushrooms is a good one. I mean, my thoughts on Paul Stamets and the host defense liners, it's great. Uh, Paul's great. He's always fun to talk to. He's a unique individual in the mycology, the mycological world. His products are cool. They're mycelium based. I think they have a good use. There's research to back it. I know there's a debate against fruiting body versus mycelium. We carry their products at Mom's. I use his products regularly. That being said, I also tend to like fruiting body extracts for a lot of stuff because, again, I do sort of think there's a wisdom in what we've been doing for a long time. And the mycelium does oftentimes contain a lot of grain afterwards, which may or may not be a big deal. It's hard to say. Paul's got some good research that he's done showing that the beta glucans in the oat fiber work in synergy with the mycelium. So I think those ones are great. There's a lot of great mushroom companies out there right now, people that are doing it right. I just consulted with a brand that's making actually you could the amounts aren't highly therapeutic enough, but Circle Organics is a company I recently consulted with, and they're making mushroom products and their gummies. And they're coming from a leading gummy manufacturer. Everything's really clean, but the mushroom extracts are from Namex, and Namex is one of the leading mushroom companies in the US from a standardization. They've got crazy, crazy partnerships with growers in China that have been doing reishi for, hundreds of years, family lineages that do it like in the most highest quality way. Which is a sort of another thing to think about, is like a lot of people have a fear of certain things coming from overseas, and that's rightfully so. but there are plenty of places overseas, like in China, where they're growing things in a capacity that we couldn't even do in the next 50 years here in this country because they've been doing it for so long. They have the technology, they've got the expertise, and they're doing it in a way where they're making really high quality extracts. So, Real Mushrooms is another company that is really good that has fruiting body extracts, and they use some Namex stuff, and um, yeah. So, but Paul's stuff is good. You know, it fits a certain need state at price point, and he's very, very wholly committed to making products that are going to benefit people in the world. So I don't have anything against Host Defense.
Thanks, Jose. Yeah, that's the impression I've always gotten. I'm on the website right now and I'm scouring it and I'm not seeing any kind of third-party testing, which I don't know if that's just not done as much in mushroom supplements. It looks like they have like onboard mycologists and biologists and chemists and but I don't know about a third party. So I guess you just have to,
Are,
yeah, trust
are
the
you
source
looking at
on that one.
Host Defense specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they do some stuff for what they're manufacturing. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I'm looking at like a doing the research and following the science section. There's no third party, but
Yeah, and I think Host Defense is an interesting one because I think that a lot of stuff is done in house in their own
but
like
it seems like,
labs and stuff.
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they have a few, especially with some of their newer products they made. They were doing certain tests. Might just not be posting it there.
I see on the who we are page, Laura, it does mention briefly third-party testing. I don't see the company that does it though.
Yeah.
Okay, I might have missed that.
Also, their websites change, so that's another thing.
I either reached out to someone on their team or maybe it was a different company before and somebody sent me actual like data from research that had been done or testing, which was pretty cool. I know that this one just spoke to me about like the effectiveness of the extract versus the capsule and basically explain that it's a lot harder to take the extract because it tastes disgusting, but it's more potent.
Yeah, of course. That's always the case.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Real Mushrooms. It's another interesting, good company. Let's see, going back up. Using mushroom supplements instead of consuming them as a whole food. A lot of these mushrooms can't be I mean, there are plenty that can be consumed, but a lot of these are medicinal and they can't be consumed as a food. They were traditionally done as a tea extract or powderized and consumed. The only ones that I can think of that aren't like that are like shiitake. Obviously, you can eat shiitake mushrooms and get benefits from them, and I would recommend you eat them because they're delicious. Same thing with oyster mushrooms. But things like turkey's tail, like no one likes to eat turkey's tail. It just tastes like wood, and is almost impossible to break down.
Lion's mane's pretty good.
Yeah, and lion's mane is a chef's choice type of mushroom. That one's really good. That's one that I would also recommend people eat because the dosage required for any sort of nerve growth factor potential is pretty high, which makes sense because it's a food. Cellcore. No, I'd have to look that company up. I'm not aware of them. Proprietary blend is hiding something, but it's not necessarily hiding something in a bad way. I don't particularly like it personally because it's hard to know if it's really going to be effective from a clinical perspective. Like if I don't have amounts, like I don't know what I'm dealing with. It's not to say that it's bad. And oftentimes proprietary formula, like if you talk to a company, they will at least give you the ingredient list. They just might not give you the amount or how they formulate. And a proper label typically lists what's in the proprietary formula. That just doesn't list the amount. So if it only says proprietary blend and nothing else, I would ask them. And depending on what it is, if they weren't willing to give you at least some like level of what they put in that product, I would not take it. Like I'm not taking a product that says it's going to help me sleep and it's blah 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 proprietary blend and they don't tell me Because what if they put a ton of melatonin mixed in with, like, I don't know, an herb that valerian, and I'm gonna stay up all night. So I would question it personally. I don't think, if I'd have to like look, but I'm pretty sure none of the products I've ever brought in that say proprietary blend just say that. Like, they all list like what's in that blend, just not the amount. Normally they give you like a total amount or something, like it's 10 grams of proprietary blend of these 4 herbs or 5 herbs. So you can guess the ratio yourself. You can guess the extract yourself. I think the only other thing was the allulose question, right? Let's see, is that due to patent issues? Maybe. I think it's also like just they don't want people to like copy their formula right away. Oftentimes you'll see it with smaller companies, and big companies could just swoop in and take over, which is pretty normal, unfortunately. So going back real quick to the allulose question, I think that it's just sort of there's a part of it that's evidence-based, I'll be honest, and then there's a part of it that's a gut feeling. But essentially, allulose is a byproduct of the corn industry, and it's a byproduct of fructose, and it is a waste product that's being created in general. There is a company, I think, out of France that's using dates, lots and lots and lots and lots of dates to get the allulose, and is doing a natural extraction. But in general, they're taking large amounts of spent high fructose corn syrup or fructose from the corn industry as a waste byproduct in these large vats with a huge amount of E. coli. And the E. coli is essentially, or another, there's 2 processes. There's the E. coli process, and there's another enzymatic process that essentially epimerizes, which is where you take the molecular structure of the fructose and it flips it over. And when fructose flips over, it's allulose. Or you'll see it on labels as D-psychose, D-P-S-I-C-O-S-E, which is another way that a lot of companies will hide that it's allulose. But now that allulose has been made to be sort of cool and hip, it's being written out as allulose. But so it's a byproduct of an industry that I'm already a little bit skeptical of. To me, it's like, my joke is like, okay, who got the chemistry idea that if we just flip this into this natural sweetener that's found in nature, in extremely small amounts, we can just use it as a sugar alternative. Because I just imagine there was some guy sitting around like, man, I waste out so much fructose every month. I gotta like just burn these vats. Like, I'm burning millions of dollars of it. Can't we do something? And they threw a chemist at it. And the chemist was like, well, we could epimerize it. We could turn it into allulose. It's another product now. And they've done a lot of research on it, anti-diabetic, anti-hyperlipidemic. It has a lot of research showing that it can be really beneficial. But we have to be leery of these sort of alternative sweeteners. They trick the brain. The brain still wants to find the sugar. That's a problem. And I don't know. I think it was 2 years ago or so, I was asked to do some research on it because of who I am for the company, because there's a lot of food companies that are using allulose in their formulation, and the company moms wanted to know if they should be bringing in products that way. And so I did a big deep dive on it, and I looked at a lot of research, and I found lots of good research supporting it, obviously, and funded by all sorts of different organizations. But one of the things that stood out for me is that I found out that the EU still has not regulated it and does not allow it. And they have very strict standards. So for a lot of time, Whole Foods and a lot of companies have followed EU standards in terms of ingredient sourcing to a certain degree. And so if the EU had been like, okay, this is okay, we vetted it through everything, and everything else was saying it, I might have been more lenient. But because the EU wasn't behind it, because certain other organizations in this country weren't behind it. And then I found some really interesting rat studies that no one likes to talk about, which were and like, if you were to read the abstract of the rat study, the abstract actually said there was no problem with the allulose. The rodents had, better glucose, better blood lipid levels, blah, blah, blah. But if you actually read the studies, it says that upon the histological study, so when they finished the study and they killed the rats and they dissected them, They found that in all of the cases of the groups of rats that were fed the allulose, that their livers and kidneys had increased in size. Non-tumorous, non-cancerous growth, the organs just increased in size. And it was a statistically significant increase in size. And so I found like 2 studies that were like that. If I remember correctly, it was 2. And I thought that was quite interesting because, again, in nature, allulose is found in very, very, very minuscule amounts, almost not detectable. It's super small. It takes a lot of dates for these guys to make the natural allulose that exists on the market, because there are brands now that are using that instead of the allulose that's coming out of the sort of byproduct industry. But most of the allulose on the market is coming out of that byproduct industry. It's not coming from dates. So anyway, nature does make this chemical. It is natural. But it's always in super small amounts, which for me means our body is not supposed to ever consume it in extremely large amounts that would never have been able to be there before, which I think is probably why it gets processed in the body a certain way that leads to histological changes. Would that happen in humans? I don't know. The other thing is that a lot of gastrointestinal distress and issue happens, I believe, at the 30-gram dosage, if I remember correctly. In studies with mild cramping, nausea, potentially diarrhea, we don't know its impact on gut motility and the gut microbiome at those dosages. And one of the problems with allulose in the alternative sugar world is that these things become ubiquitous quickly, and all of a sudden you're drinking your soda with allulose, you're having your cookie with allulose, you're having your ice cream with allulose, and the average consumer is going to quickly hit that top threshold of gastrointestinal distress due to eating too much allulose. And so anyway, that's kind of the long and short of it to a certain degree or another. And there's probably more and more research coming out. Maybe time will prove and show that it's fine and safe and it's not a big deal, or maybe it'll be the next high fructose corn syrup in 20 years from now. So that's my deep dive on allulose. Sorry.
No, that's great. Yeah. Something everybody should hear. Everybody's just got all this extra fructose because none of, and then they're flipping it.
Yeah, isn't that great? When I found
That's
that out, I
crazy.
laughed. I was like, man, everything's such a racket.
That is crazy. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is enlightening, Lisa. I know, I know. Yeah. What other questions do we have, guys? I mean, this is great. Jose teaches dietary supplements and nutraceuticals for me over at Purdue Global right now. So he does this for students 10 weeks at a time per course. What questions do your students typically have, Jose, in the class?
Some of the similar ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much different. Yeah.
I have one more question if we have time. Just I have heard that instead of fish oil, like I don't know, even the good fish oil, supposedly the way that it's made is not great from what I've heard. And so I've just heard, oh, you should just actually eat fish and not take fish oil. I'm just curious your thoughts on that. That was just from like a YouTube, but the guy wrote a book on nutrition. I think he's somewhat legit, but I'm like, oh, now I can't take fish oil, you know? Anyway.
I think there's fish oil is not all created equal for sure. There's better ones on the market. A lot of cheaper fish oil is oxidized and is probably not worth taking at all because it's an oxidized EFA, and at that point it's a moot point. It's not good for you. Your body has to deal with it. I think there's a lot of merit in taking fish oil. I don't think people on average ever eat the appropriate amount to get the right amount in general. I think that there's a level of, we probably need more so than we did before because there's connections to stress and lifestyle that implicate needing more omega-3 rich foods. So I think the fish oil supplementation is a part of can be a part of a healthy diet as long as it's a quality form. There's molecular distilled, there's a triglyceride form. Each one has its merit. The sourcing of the fish that they use is important, like the Wiley's Finest and the companies that are built off of that fishery of Alaskan pollock are really clean and can be very good. Nordic Naturals is a great company. They've been doing this for a long time. Carlson's set the fish industry, like the fish oil industry, up back in the day. I will agree that I think it's better to get omega-3s from your food, like to get it from quality fish. But like arguably, like if someone was to say, can I take this really high quality fish oil supplement or eat this farm raised salmon? I'm gonna tell them to take the supplement. The farm raised salmon has more omega-6 in it because it was fed a GMO corn diet. If it's a wild caught fish, then yeah, maybe. But was it a big fish? How much heavy metals are in it? This one over here is just pure omega-3s and can be used more clinically. So there's a debate to be had there. I wouldn't write it off completely. I would also say always when taking it in a pill form that it has to be consumed with a meal. It should be consumed with digestive bitters. There needs to be something that stimulates the body to understand that it's about to get a large amount of something that has to be emulsified and digested. I prefer the liquid over the pill because of the fact that you get to taste it, and that mouth sensation and feel cephalically will tell the body it needs to produce the right enzymes to digest it. Yeah,
It's a good one.
that's a great question that just got asked too on pro-resolving mediators.
Yeah, before we dive into those, and then after those, we'll try to wrap up here so we don't keep Jose all night. But yeah, I always think the same thing, Jose. Omega-3s are probably one of the supplements that most of us need long term because we just don't eat enough. And it's really hard to get it from the flax and the walnuts and the chia because it just doesn't convert to the EPA very well through the plants. What other supplements do you think most people need these days just because of situations?
Oh man, that's
I guess vitamin D if you're in the north.
yeah, I think I tend to think about vitamin D, magnesium, zinc,
I do magnesium a lot, yeah.
copper. I think about the standard zinc, copper, magnesium. Um, it really depends on the person. There is a benefit to like those standard, like the probiotic, there is a benefit to the fish oil. Vitamin K2 is one I've for decades now I've recommended because I think that's like the sleeping gun, or the whatever you want to whatever the saying is, because like no one eats organ meats regularly. Like that's such a rarity to find someone that's like, oh, I love eating liver every week or every month or even, so I don't think people get enough vitamin K2. Um, that one's really important. Yeah. I think it's probably those the standards.
Wow, Lisa, so you learned that it takes up to 2 pounds of fish every week to meet the minimum requirements for the omega-3. Yeah, we need to take the supplement, I guess. That's cool. Yeah, what about probiotics in clear bottles, Jose? I know, a lot of companies now they'll do the dark blues, the dark browns, the bottles to protect the product.
Yeah, I don't like anything in a clear bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, just it's a bad idea. You don't know how long that's been sitting anywhere and oxidizing, and light damages everything. So, which is interesting, but it damages everything non-living, I guess. Maybe that's a better way to put it. I guess it can damage living stuff too, but the secret life of groceries and how shrimp is actually produced.
Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't actually.
Oh, it goes into details about how to have shrimp actually grow their how do I say this? That to have them have their reproductive systems produced, they have to shave off the eyes. So they're actually torturing the shrimp in order to have it have a reproductive system. And so it kind of just talks about, and then we consume it. So even places that are saying that these are wild caught or organic shrimp, it's actually being sold to even organic grocery restaurants as well, and so they're not. And so I don't know much about the reproductive system of shrimp, but just because it's also seen as a way to get some of the good like omegas in, I just wanted to know your thoughts on um, what that means for if it's still something that we should be eating, or how we could actually consume shrimp.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it to be honest with you. I don't tend to think of shrimp as an omega-3 rich source overall. I know they do have some. Um, I would go talk to my meat buyer tomorrow and I would ask them because I've not heard of this. I mean, I understand in farm raised operations they do all sorts of wild manner of things to animals to continually produce them, which I don't necessarily agree with and think is beneficial. I think there's got to be a level of sanctity in how we raise animals and take life, and I think it does impact the quality of it from all sorts of different ways. So yeah, I mean, if all the wild caught shrimp are being messed with in this manner, I don't think it would be good. I'd have to look at it. I don't know if that's the case. I feel like we carry a lot of stuff at Mom's that's been vetted and tested, and like it's like actually wild caught, and they're not doing anything else other than that. But maybe that's not true. Maybe there's an industry thing that they do. I am not aware. I would have to I'd have to look into it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts when you do.
Lisa says separate from vitamin E. Nowadays I recommend it together because it's easy. It's manufactured together. I don't think in general I don't recommend it separate very often anymore.
Yeah, I do the same.
There's been a few times where I've recommended extra, and then I'll tell them to take another one. I've had a couple of people that have taken pretty high dosages for a while to work with carotid artery plaque. So, Sylvia, that's a great question. I don't have too much. It's funny. The fermented fish oil stuff is something that I've long wanted to know more about, and everything I've ever read about it never leads me to feeling like I know much more about it. That's a big Weston Price thing. That's where that all comes from, is the fermented cod liver oil. And it's supposed to be very beneficial. Fermented foods are very beneficial. I can't say that I have a great expertise of whether or not the fermented fish oil is much better than the regular. There's a part of me that thinks it isn't actually, and that was probably a good way to stabilize it back in the day, and there's better ways to do that now. But that's just a thought process. I don't have anything to back that up. I'd have to actually really look into it.
Yeah, good question, Sylvia. Does anybody have anything else here as we wrap up in the next couple minutes? These are awesome questions. And I did invite Jose to the platform. He just, for some reason, the invite wasn't going through. So if anybody thinks of questions for him over the next few weeks, hopefully we get him in there and you can ask him questions at some point. Yeah, it was. It was informative. Paige, were you the one that requested Jose come on, or was it Lisa? I forget. Somebody was like, we need to talk about supplements. Forget who it was. But thanks, whoever recommended and recommended the topic, asked about Jose. That was a great. Jose, we appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. You guys can always reach out,
Yeah.
Answer, I will let you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, you can have a good night, everybody. Have a good night. I'll be on tomorrow and Friday if anybody needs anything.
Cool. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks, Jose. This is great.